crushed, he could finally embark on his grand tour of the Union and greet his subjects as a royal winner. He could find out what he could do for them, how he could make things better. He wondered fondly what name the adoring crowds would roar at him. Also the steadfast? Also the resolute? Also the dauntless? The stone wall of Stauffenberg? He sat back, rocked gently by the saddle, and took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. Since a northerly breeze was carrying the vapours of azure out to sea, he didn't even need to cough afterwards. "I finally understand what people mean when they say they feel like a king." "Oh, I wouldn't worry," said Tunny. "I'm sure you'll feel baffled and helpless again before you know it." "Doubtless." Also could not help glancing towards the rear of the column yet again. The wounded Lord Governor of Angland was not their only significant captive. Behind the young lion's prison wagon rattled the heavily guarded carriage containing his heavily pregnant wife. Was that Savine's pale hand gripping the windowsill? The mere thought of her name made Orso wince. When the only woman he had ever loved married another man, then betrayed him, he had fondly imagined he could feel no worse. Then he learned she was his half-sister. The smell of the haphazard slums outside the walls of Adua hardly reduced his sudden nausea. He had pictured smiling commoners, little Union flags waved by freckled children, showers of perfumed petals from beauties on the balconies. He had always turned his nose up at such patriotic guff when it was directed at other victors, but he had been rather looking forward to its being directed at him. Instead, ragged figures frowned from the shadows. A harlot chewing a chicken leg laughed from a misshapen window. One ill-favoured beggar very noticeably spat into the road as Orso trotted past. "There will always be malcontents, Your Majesty," murmured Yoru Sulphur. "Only ask my master. No one ever thanks him for his pains." Though as far as Orso could recall, Bias was always treated with the heights of servile respect. What's his solution? To ignore them? Sulphur considered the slum dwellers without emotion. Like ants. Right. Don't let them spoil the mood. But it was a little late for that. The wind seemed to have turned chilly, and Orso was developing that familiar worried prickling at the back of his neck. The wagon grew even gloomier. Its clattering wheels began to echo. Beyond the barred window, Leo saw cut stone rush past, knew they must be riding through one of Adua's gates. He'd dreamed of entering the capital at the head of a triumphant parade. Instead, he came locked in a prison wagon stinking of stale straw, wounds, and shame. The floor jolted, sent a throb of agony through the stump of his leg, squeezed tears from his raw eyes. What a fucking fool he'd been. The advantages he'd tossed away, the chances he'd let slip past, the traps he'd blundered into. He should have told that treacherous coward Isha to fuck himself the moment his prattle tilted towards rebellion. Or better yet, gone straight to Savine's father and spilled the whole story to old Styx. Then he'd still have been the Union's most celebrated hero, the champion who beat the great wolf, not the dunce who lost to the young lamb. He should have swallowed his pride with King Jappo, flattered and flirted and played the diplomat, offered Westport with a giggle, swapped that worthless offcut of Union territory for all the rest, and landed in Midderland with Styrian troops behind him. He should have brought his mother. The thought of her begging on the docks made him want to rip his hair out. She'd have pressed that shambles on the beach into order, taken one calm glance at the maps and set the men flowing southwards, got to Stauffenberg first and forced the enemy into a losing battle. He should have sent his reply to Orso's dinner invitation on the end of a lance, attacked with every man before sunset, and swept the lying bastard from the high ground, torn up